Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. This evening, I thought I would talk about the realms of existence, the various possibilities of rebirth in this samsara. We're all presently in the condition of human beings, the manusaloka, the human realm, human world. So this is most familiar to us. There are in the Buddhist cosmological system, there are a very wide range of possibilities of existence. Lower than human is a range of lower realms. At the very bottom are the Naraya, the hell realms. These are places of intense suffering and cruelty. The karmic result of being cruel and bloody-handed in the human existence is birth in Naraya. And it says something, I think, about the perversity of human imagination, that the tortures and miseries of hell are described in much more detail than the pleasures of the heaven worlds. The cruelties and sufferings in hell are by fire in various forms, fire or molten copper, by various sorts of biting insects or birds, cruelty of the hell wardens, and dragging people around with hooks and so on. And there are also hells of filth, where the main suffering is being immersed in a lake full of urine and feces and pus and vomit and so on. There are very many specific hells mentioned in the text, and it's really not possible to draw up a coherent system. There are different lists and different descriptions, but one common theme is the great hell, Mahanaraya, or as it's called in the commentaries, Avicii hell. Avicii means without remit, without intermission, continuous. And the idea is that the suffering there is without any relief whatsoever. And this is like the worst possible place in the universe. It's described as a iron box, 100 yojanas on a side, that's heated red hot and crammed in every centimeter with living beings. Part of the suffering is being so overcrowded you can't move without poking your elbow into somebody else's face. And flames shoot out from the western wall and reach to the eastern wall, and from the eastern wall to the western wall, and so on. And it's kind of a poignant image that this is conceived as being at the root, at the bottom of the earth, like underground. And 100 yojanas seems fairly big, but on the scale of the Buddhist cosmos, it's quite small. Talking about tens of thousands of yojanas for various features of the world system. So in the universe, in this picture, you have at the very root of everything this concentrated node of absolute misery. That's right, at the base of everything. Beyond the hell realms, there are other lower existences that are less extreme. There's the realms of the animals and the realms of the ghosts. Petas and ghosts and tirachana are animals. Ghosts are an existence of suffering by lack, by want. They're always hungry and thirsty. They can't fulfill their desires. It's a form of existence that's like a bad image of the human realm. And people are born there often because of dying with a great deal of craving and clinging, that they still want to have a human existence, but they're no longer able to. And it seems that ghosts often don't even realize that they're ghosts. They realize something's wrong, but they can't figure it out. There's one story of one of the Arahant monks encountered a ghost in a sugarcane field, and he was suffering from hunger pangs, and he said, I can't eat the sugar cane. I'm surrounded by sugar cane, but somehow I can't grasp it. What's wrong with me? And he used a phrase in Pali that means, I feel like a cut self. Like something lacking. But he didn't realize he was a ghost. And the monk explained to him, you're dead, you've been reborn as a ghost. And the reason you're suffering this way is because when you were a human being, you were walking down the road with some sugar cane in your hand, and a poor beggar asked for a piece of sugar cane, and you ignored him, and he kept asking, and finally you contemptuously handed him one behind your back. And now you're suffering, you can't take the sugar cane, but try taking a piece from behind your back. And he was able to do it then. It seems that the ghost realm is not too far from the human realm. Of all the various realms, other than the animal realm, which is at the same plane as human, and we encounter animals all the time, it seems like the ghost realm is the closest to us. People all over the world encounter ghosts. It's the most common occurrence. The animal realm is one that's ordinarily visible to us. They're inhabiting the same kind of cosmological space as humans. They're called tirachana in Pali, which means horizontal going, because the spines of animals are generally horizontal to the ground. It's considered an unfortunate birth because in the ordinary case of animals, there's a great deal of suffering. They suffer from hunger and thirst, and they're preyed upon by other animals or by humans. And for the most part, they live in a kind of darkness. They don't have fully developed language like humans, so they suffer from a great deal of ignorance. But it's also said the animal realm, of all the different realms of existence, the animal realm is the most diverse. There's such a wide range of beings in the animal realm, from tiny microscopic creatures to gigantic animals like whales and everything in between. And some animals, a small proportion relatively, some animals enjoy a pleasant life. In the ancient times, they listed like royal horses and elephants that were pampered and fed and protected, but nowadays would be like cats and dogs that are looked after by humans. In terms of just material existence, they have more enjoyment than some humans, but there's still an unfortunate birth. There's still a lack there. They can't, for one thing, they can never encounter the Dhamma, hear the Dhamma. It's beyond their understanding. And even if we include the kind of magical animals like nagas and supanas, dragons and giant birds. And there are other ones as well, like giant sea monsters. And some of the Nagas and the Supanas are very intelligent, and they have speech and language, and the Nagas in particular, they live in underwater cities, palaces. But it's impossible for even these beings to ever attain to enlightenment as long as they are in the animal form. There are a few stories about Nagas that take up spiritual practice, but it's never for enlightenment, it's for seeking a heavenly rebirth. One of these Nagas made a comment as he was expressing why he wanted to have a heavenly rebirth. He said, enough of this lowly frog-eating animal existence. You know? This is a powerful Naga, like a dragon lord. Above the human realm are a range of heavenly worlds. And these come in different grades and classes, and they're quite distinct from each other. Dewas are the beings that we would call in English perhaps gods. They range from the Bhumadewas, who are minor Dewas that live on this earth, particularly in forests and in trees, up to powerful beings that live in heavenly worlds, the sagas, or heavens. There are 6 sagas. The lowest is the Chatumaharajaka Dewas, that is the Dewas of the 4 great kings. They are ruled over by 4 powerful monarchs, one for each direction, north, east, west, and south. And these are the guardians of the world. They live halfway up the slopes of Mount Sinnaru. And at the peak of Mount Sinnaru are the Tawatingsa Dewas, the gods of the 33. And these are the ones that in the texts are most often spoken of. There's most kind of detail about them, and it's the one that the ancients seem to relate to the most. They are ruled over by Saka, who's an interesting figure. He has many aspects. He's somewhat of a trickster in some of the stories, a trickster figure. In others, he's the overlord of the earth, protector of the world. And the 4 great kings report to him. He's their overlord. He sits on a giant throne at the very summit of the earthly world. These Dewas live in palaces called Vimanas that are mobile. They float around so they can travel through the air in their Vimanas. And they have retinues. The high Dewas have lower classes of Dewas that serve them as their retinue in their Vimanas. Principally, these are Gandhabas and Acharas. The Gandhabas are musicians and the Acharas are dancing girls. And it's said that Saka, the king of the gods, had 84,000 Acharas. Yeah. The pleasures of these gods and these levels are sensual. These are sensual level heavens. And it's principally enjoyment of beautiful things and beautiful people. Everything that's described there is like exquisitely beautiful. The parks, the gardens, the palaces, the chariots, the gods themselves. All the male gods perpetually look like they're 25 years old, and the females look like they're 16 years old, which is ancient Indian idea of the peak beauty. Their food is principally Sudabhojana, which is heavenly food like ambrosia. that cures all ailments and purifies the being and is exquisitely delicious. It's nowhere described too exactly, but it seems to be a milky sort of liquid. This Tawatingsa heaven is the last one that's in contact with the earth and still suffer from aggression from the Asuras, who are a lower class of beings that continually trying to make war on them, swarming up the slopes of Sinnaru like ants up a pillar. And these wars are endless. Neither side ever attains complete victory. And it's partly dependent on conditions in the human realm. When the humans are living in a moral, decent way, then more Dewas are born and they have victories over the Asuras. But when human beings are living heedlessly and immorally, then the Asuras increase in number and they have victories over the Dewas. Above the Tawatingsa Devas, there's still 4 more levels of Dewas, and these live in heaven realms that are up in space above the terrestrial level. The lowest one of these are the Yamadewas, which means the contented ones. They enjoy a greater happiness than the Tawatingsa Dewas, in large part because they're the first level that are completely free of strife and violence. They're disconnected from the Asura wars. Then above them are the level of the Tusita Dewas. And this is a special realm because the Bodhisattva is always born there. The Buddha, before he became the Buddha, we call him the Bodhisattva, and his last birth, before he takes his human birth, is always in Tusita heaven. There's a story about a man was dying and he was on his deathbed and he had monks come in to chant for him, and in the air above his bed he saw 6 chariots that came from the 6 Dewa worlds, and they all wanted him to come and be reborn in their world. And he said, "Go away, not now, not now." And the monks got up and left because he thought he was talking to them. But he wanted to hear the end of the chanting. And so his family chided him, "Why did you send the monks away?" And he says, "I didn't send the monks away. There's chariots of the Dewas above my bed." And he asked his daughter, who was very well educated and knew all the suttas and so forth, asked her, "Dear, which realm should I choose? They're telling me I can choose whichever realm I want to go to." And she said, "You should choose the Tusita heaven, because then you can see Metteyya Buddha, who's there waiting for his rebirth." And he said, "Yes, I'll do that, thank you." And they gave him a garland of flowers, and he threw it in the air, and it hung on the yoke of the Tusita chariot. And then he died and was carried away in the chariot to Tusita heaven. And the people around his bed saw him throw the garland and saw it just hang in the air. They didn't see that. No one else could see the chariots. So it was considered a very fortunate birth to be in the Tusita heaven. And some Buddhists aspire to rebirth in Tusita. Then above them is the heaven of the gods who delight in creating. Nimanarati Dewa, the gods who delight in their own creations. These Dewas have the ability to manifest anything they wish. If they want a palace, if they want a chariot, they just imagine it in all detail and it appears for them. Now this is something, that is a step beyond the other Dewas. They often have powers that we would call magical, but they're somewhat limited, and their accoutrements, their clothing and their palaces and so on, are generated by the force of the good karma they've made as humans. but they don't have such control over it. But these beings have such good karma that they have complete control over the manifestation. And I think it's kind of a general rule with these different realms of existence are varied in perception. Like in the human realm, we have perception through our senses, and it's very constrained. We get signals from the senses and we perceive an existence of an outer world, but we don't have a great deal of control over it. But when we're dreaming it, it's much more fluid. Many fantastic things can appear in dreams. It's still the faculty of perception, but it's not limited by the senses. And I think in the heaven realms, it's somewhere in between our waking and dreaming states. The perception is more fluid than our waking state, less fluid than our dreaming state. But when you get up to Nimanarati Dewas, they have a control over that faculty, and they're able to manifest as a reality whatever things they desire. And yet there's one higher sensual heaven, and that's the heaven of the gods who delight in the creation of others. These Dewas don't even bother creating anything. They basically enslave the lower Dewas to create things for them. And it's said they don't even have to express a wish. The lower Dewas know what the higher Dewas want. It says just as the cook in the king's palace knows what flavors the king prefers and doesn't have to ask him before he cooks the meal what to do. So we reached here the pinnacle of sensual existence, and this is an interesting point, that it comes in the end to a condition of absolute supine decadence, uselessness. These beings just receive all these pleasures without making any effort, and they're absolutely effete, useless. As we move through the Dewa realms, another aspect is that the sensual pleasures become more refined. They become subtler. Of all the various pleasures, music, beautiful clothing, food, pleasure parks and the palaces and so on, everything becomes more refined as we move upward. This is spelled out in one text, actually for a Sarvastivadin text, although I found in a commentary, a Theravada commentary, a similar idea, that the pleasure of sexuality is described in a little bit of detail, traversing these various realms. The lowest two heavens, the beings make love in a similar way to humans, except that the male does not ejaculate. They don't reproduce sexually, so it's just for pleasure. But then at the level of the Yamadewas, there's no penetration. The beings merely embrace. At the level of the Sita Dewas, they hold hands. And at the level of the gods that delight in creation, they no longer physically touch. They gaze at each other and smile. And then the highest level sensual Dewas, they don't even smile. They just gaze at each other and bliss out. So the sensuality becomes from the coarse realms of the humans, that everything here, the food, the sexuality, everything is coarse and gross relative to what the refined pleasures of the higher Dewas. And it's a subtle movement to, at the end, sensuality is so extremely refined, we would have a hard time relating to it as being sensual at all. But it's still within the sensual sphere. So higher than those are the Brahma gods. And I've crossed a major threshold here. The Brahma gods are non-sensual. So they are not divided into genders. They're just reckoned as beings. There's no male nor female among them. They do not take any kind of food. Instead, they feed on bliss. They feed on jhanic bliss. Their level of consciousness is equivalent to being in jhana. They only have the two senses of sight and hearing to operate functionally. They don't have the other senses, the touch, smell, and taste. And these Brahma gods are divided into various grades as well, and it's a fairly complicated system, but it could be simplified to say there's four primary divisions. These are related to the four jhanas. So the Brahmas of the first level are equivalent to first jhana level, and they still have Vitaka Vichara, that is conceptual thought. So they are the ones that we hear about the most because they're still somewhat engaged in activity in the world. The chant that Anthea did at the outset here was Brahma Sahampati, asking the Buddha to teach. That's the origin of that chant. And this is a first level Brahma god. And this level of Brahma gods, they sometimes they suffer from the defilement of wrong view. They can fall into wrong view because they are so very, very long-lived, living hundreds of kappas, that they perceive themselves to be immortal. There's a description in the Brahmajala Sutta of how creationist kind of religions get started. It's because at the beginning of a new world system, the first Brahma that appears in his palace in this realm for a long time is all alone there. And he begins to wish that he had some company. And as other beings, by the force of their karma, appear in this realm, he believes he's created them by his wish. Then he tells them and they believe it, and they worship him. And he's like the all-creator. There's a sutta where the Buddha goes to visit one of these beings, Baka, the Brahma, to cure him of his wrong view. And when the Buddha appears in this realm, the other Brahmas tell him, you should bow down, Samana, to Baka. Baka is the mighty one. Baka is the great, powerful, all-creator, the Lord and Master. It's a long, long list of all these epithets. Yeah? And then the Buddha, of course, doesn't bow down to him and challenges him to a contest of, in the end, of who can disappear from the other's view. And the Baka disappears and the Buddha can easily find him. And then the Buddha disappears by going up one level higher in the cosmos. And Baka had no conception. He thought he was the peak of the cosmos, so of course he couldn't find him. And the commentary adds a comical twist to this, that it says that Baka tried 3 times to disappear. The second time he created a great darkness and the Buddha dispersed it with his radiance. But the third time he ran out from his palace and hid behind a mulberry bush. And the other lesser Brahmas were ridiculing him. So we have quite a few stories and episodes about this level of Brahmas. At the second, third, and fourth level, we never hear of individuals or never hear of them doing anything because they're beyond conceptual thought. So they don't actually do anything. They just blissed out all the time. The second level have a consciousness dominated by the quality of rapture, and the third level dominated by the quality of bliss. So they can be distinguished visually by their radiance. The radiance of the second level Brahmas flickers like a torch, and the third level Brahmas is a steady glow. Yeah? And the fourth level dwell in equanimity. Yeah. Also classed amongst the Brahmas at the highest level are the Sudavasa, or the pure abodes. These are the realms where beings go who have died as anagami, or third level of enlightenment, because they've destroyed the fetters of sensual desire and ill will. They can no longer be reborn in the sensual desire levels. There's no karmic energy left for that type of rebirth, so they can only be reborn in the Sudavasa. Then there's still 4 more levels that are the levels of the formless beings. And we can't say that they're higher, because they're higher in a metaphorical sense, but they're not higher in a geographical sense, or a spatial sense, because the formless realms are mind only. They're pure mind, and space is a quality of the material world. So you can't locate these beings anywhere. They are neither here nor there, nor nowhere nor everywhere, because those are all concepts relating to space, which is a physical level quality. And these are the levels of boundless space, boundless consciousness, nothingness, and neither perception nor non-perception. It's worthwhile to contemplate these, get an idea, try to wrap your mind around the existence of those beings, because it qualifies the quality of mind. It's difficult for us as embodied beings to separate mind and matter. It's always a tricky, complex issues involved, but it's like a thought experiment to imagine a realm with no physicality. It's just pure mind. What would that experience be? So all these various realms, it's possible to be born into them, and it's possible for them to fall away and be reborn in a lower existence as well. And it's the nature of samsara to be continually going round and round. That's what samsara means. Samsarati is to turn around. The goal of Buddhism, we have to always remember, the goal is not to find any particular spot in that, but to escape from it altogether, to make an ending of it, because it's all ultimately pointless. Whether you're born as a flea or as a Brahma god, it's still just conditioned existence. There's a Hindu story of a sage who, with his psychic power, he went up to the realm of the gods, and he encountered Vishnu. And Vishnu was boasting pompously about his high station as a god. And the sage said, "You see on the table there's a line of ants crossing the table. Every single one of those ants was previously Vishnu in a former existence." So that kind of put him in his place. And this human existence is special in a particular way, in that this is the ideal condition for attaining release, for attaining liberation or enlightenment. It's possible to do so from the Dewa realms. It's not possible to do so from the lower realms, but it's much more difficult for the Dewas, because they're so enraptured in their pleasurable existence. They don't see any reason, any flaw in it. It's not evident to them. But the human realm, we have a mix of pleasure and pain, and we have a degree of intelligence that we're able to learn about the Dhamma and able to practice it and do something. And it's only in the human realm that Buddhas appear. So the human birth is not the highest, it's not the most pleasurable, it's not the most powerful, but it has got this special quality of being the most opportune balance point. So we should cherish our human rebirth and use the opportunity wisely while we have a human form, because we may not always have it.